warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. Today as well, we're continuing our focus on the COVID-19 impact. I'm joined by a very illustrious panel today. I have representatives from Levers, Axis Bank, Ogilvy and Lowe Lintas. So without any further ado, let me introduce my great panel. And I am going to be discussing the trials and tribulations of actually engaging with your TG, with your co-consumers and potential consumers during this very, very trying period. With that, let me introduce to you by today's panel. It's Shiva Krishnamurthy from Unilever, Asha Kharga from Axis Bank, Kainaz Karmakar from Ogilvy, and Prateek Bhardwaj from Lowe Lintas. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. First things first, let me pose the question to you, Shiva, first. We have now completed over 2.5 months in lockdown. Tell me, as you know, a leading marketer of the country, what were you faced with in terms of a dilemma, in terms of a challenge? Because when we first went into lockdown, we were all in a state of helplessness. And then, of course, we slowly picked up the pace and started crawling and then leaping. As a marketer, what were your inner deliberations that you were having with your team within Levers?
We also started with denial, to be honest, because around 15th or 20th of March, when it all started, I don't think any of us were willing to believe that this will last for longer than a few weeks. So we were always telling ourselves that, look, it's a matter of a week or two, maybe 3, but certainly not more than that. So this is just a little break and we're going to come back to normal very soon. So I think that's the way many of us looked at it to begin with. But once it started to sink in and once we realized that this is here to stay, I think we quickly started pivoting our thinking and changing the mindset of saying that this is the new normal. We need to learn to live with it and we need to find ways to continue to engage with our consumers at this time. So that's when the pivot happened a few weeks later, I would say 2 to 3 weeks later. And after that, of course, it comes back to the belief that the fundamentals don't change, the brand does not change, the context does, however, change. And brands like Brooke Bond, which have an inspiring purpose, are always the beacon for action. So with a clear purpose, as you know, on inclusion, the ideas started to flow, the relevance started to come in, and then we just went with the flow and we've managed to engage consumers while being topical and contextual, yet sensitive and empathetic.
Asha, I'd love to know your views on, as the CMO, the deliberations in your mind and whether to engage or not, and if so, how to engage. How did you really overcome that initial hiccup that we all went through?
So Sonali, on Axis Bank, I'd like to say that we had actually outlined our brand philosophy in the month of January this year. And that philosophy is rooted in our core truth. It is in our core reality, which has got to do with service. And I thought, and I'd like to say that in this COVID era, and especially when the country went into lockdown, as a bank, to be able to reach out to customers and to be able to offer the highest levels of service was actually a complete yes from our side, because banks are essential services, and even in a lockdown, the bank has to remain open. And in that sense, we said that what we do on ground is what we need to reflect in our campaigns, what we need to reflect in our advertising. And anything that is real, anything that is relevant will always touch a chord, because then it's not advertising. It's a reflection of what is truly happening on the ground.
Let me take it to both the creatives on my panel today, Kainaz and Prateek. For you guys as well, it must have been a shocker like it has been for all of us. So the whole idea of, shooting is possible, shooting from home, getting your creative in line with, your client's brief. In this case, levers, and Prateek, in your case, axis, and really turning around that must have been, I'm sure, a project that was inundated with challenges. Take me through that process, Kainaz.
Hi, Sonali. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. And I think that challenge is the right word that you used. It was a challenge. As Shiva mentioned, when this started, I think not just advertising, but the world was not prepared for this. Nobody was prepared to, know how long this is going to last and how intense it's going to be. So creating advertising in a time like this has been absolutely a crazy process. In the first few weeks, the only thing we could think of was user-generated content and stringing it together and making films out of it, because that was all that was available to us. As weeks passed by, India being India, we started being a little more ingenious about the way we came out with solutions, and we started thinking, what can we do? So when we wrote this particular, the film for Brook Bond that Shiva mentioned, which is about being sensitive to people who suffer from COVID and their families and not to isolate them, the challenge in producing it was that we could not break a single law. Unilever and Ogilvy are very strict about not breaking the laws of shoot. So we had to have a couple who's living in the same house. The story was between a husband and wife. So we had to have a couple living in the same house, and both needed to be actors. That is possible. It's not an impossible thing to find, but how do you shoot it? How we can't send a cameraman inside the house, so how do you shoot it? So Buddy, who's the director, started the search, and we started brainstorming on what to do. And hats off to him, because he managed to find a couple in Pune, husband and wife, both actors, and the son was from the film school. So he could operate the camera. So he was the camera operator, and the couple were the actors. A shoot that would normally take 1 day took 2.5 days for us to complete, because this is the process. Every shot would be shot and put on a WhatsApp group, for which there was the creative team and the director. After that, the creative team would send feedback to the director would send feedback to the clients, and all of these was happening on voice notes. And in between all that, the actors had to wait, and it was a whole new process we had to get used to. And when we saw the final product come together, a whole film made over just contact with each other on WhatsApp, which honestly, if you look at the film, it does not look like it's lacking in production values or it's lacking in performance, it's lacking in music, absolutely not. And it connected so beautifully with the consumers that it was probably more satisfying than a lot of work we have done on many other projects in the non-COVID times, because the entire process was so it was a great learning.
I'm sure it must be a very, very challenging experience. I mean, for us, shooting, doing panel discussions, interviews is quite frustrating. So I can just imagine what you guys have gone through. Prateek, for you, I've seen some commercials from Axis Bank, and I think for you also it's been a journey from when you first started to now it must have become routine for you.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's been a learning curve, and like Kainaz said, in the beginning, it was all about stringing pieces together from crowdsourced footage. And, in the beginning, we had to respond quickly. There were some messages that had to go out very quickly. And the point was not just to produce a film for the sake of producing, but to have something to say. And that's why you produce a film. And the first one that we did was Dil Se Thank You, which was really thanking all the people, all the heroes who were providing essential services. And we needed to get it out before the day that we all went out on our balconies and clapped to celebrate them. And we wanted that out quickly because we wanted our own bankers to feel that they were part of these essential services and also the heroes that were battling. So that film we had to get out very quickly. And we really just hired an editor, strung some footage together, bought some footage, and that's it. We made it ourselves, and because we needed to be in time. And the trouble with these films is usually when you're crowdsourcing, it's because it's somebody shooting somewhere else, somebody shooting with some other device. How do you string it all together? How do you make it all have one language? And we were lucky that way because with our brand we have a strong track which is recognizable. We have so we had that held it all together, and we gave it great and all. But now again we're making another film now. We've got a product that has something to offer, and for that we are shooting now another film. In fact, Asha and I have a PPM to attend immediately after this. So that one we're shooting again. That things are opening up as the rules open up, as the law opens up. It allows us to be a little more clever in the way we do things. And shoots are happening. We're shooting through Zoom. Director is sitting in his room on Zoom. The agency is on Zoom. You're communicating with the actors. You just get a camera through. So there are different ways we're finding out. I mean, and yeah, it's all coming together. We're becoming pros.
That's great. So, I mean, kudos to everybody on this panel for actually going through with this and, managing to engage with, your customers. And Shiva, on that note, I really want to put this to both marketers on the panel. And maybe you can take this first, Shiva, that, most brands are still in a bit of a dilemma. Should they engage? Should they not engage? Should they spend the money? Should they not spend the money? So, congratulations on actually, biting the bullet and putting out communication and messaging out there, which still, manages to resonate with, large audiences. Having said that, I mean, I'm sure all of us must have had reservations about what is the kind of sensitivities involved in actually now creating an ad, both from, you as brand owners and, as creative people. What is acceptable, what is not acceptable. While today, yes, we know in our journey we're shooting in the context and the backdrop being the lockdown because we're all, grounded at home. Going forward, how do you think regular advertising will transform in terms of, the right etiquette of sending out a message?
In a situation or a context like the one that we are operating, the business has to make certain choices and has to make certain trade-offs. The position that we find ourselves in, I think the most important element of the marketing mix, or arguably the most important P of the P's in marketing, is perhaps place or availability. So I think the most important thing, since the supply chains have been as disrupted as we know they have been, it is really important to put our first dollar or the first effort behind making the product available. In many cases, that might end up incurring cost which is over and above normal. So this means it's obviously a trade-off. After having made the product available, most brands or marketers would like to keep their brands salient because, as and as every marketer or advertiser would appreciate, we don't necessarily advertise for the present or for the next month's sale. We see advertising as an investment in the brand's equity, and it is a way that we strengthen brands which last for a long period of time. So ideally, every brand and every marketer would want to continue to remain salient despite the very challenging business environment. Coming now to what should the message be? I think that the brand should first be true to itself rather than trying to jump onto the context. I think the first thing is about being true to yourself, about what the brand stands for, because latching on to a context without really being true to yourself will be rather inauthentic, and you get very found out very easily these days by consumers who are very demanding when it comes to brands and the points of view that they have on society.
Asha, your views on the protocol for how we make our ads going forward. And secondly, if I could additionally ask you, We've seen right now commercials that have been made during the lockdown that have been essentially for digital. What do you think, the plan will be when we start making, messaging and commercials for mass media? And really, I'm talking about television here.
Many of us do not realize the role that banks play in keeping the country and the economy open. The kind of segments that we touch, the lives that we touch, and the fact that there is a lockdown outside but Zindagi open hai is really relevant and contextual to the situation. So it was, whatever we put out there has to be relevant and is not a fad. So just to give you a couple of examples, the fact that our salaries got credited on time, the fact that ATMs were full of cash, the fact that the Kirana wala had a POS machine on which you could swipe your card, the fact that, in rural India, in Jan Dhan accounts, money was being deposited, the fact that mobile ATMs were going across containment zones where people could access cash and be able to buy daily necessities. These are things that actually many people do not think about on a daily basis. And possibly in a situation like a lockdown is when it hits you that, so many of these essential services that you take for granted are not going to be available if banks are not open, if people are not coming in. Think about the number of IT servers that are working to make sure your digital funds are getting transferred, to make sure that UPI transactions are happening, to make sure that online payments are happening. E-commerce really boomed a lot. So the point I'm trying to say is that here was a situation which was actually perfect for banking to showcase that we are actually responsible for making the country run, and we have a very critical role to play in keeping India open. And that's why it made a direct connect with the brand, and it did not seem like a brand trying to take advantage of the situation, trying to be opportunistic and trying to create salience for itself, for no reason at all. Because consumers can see through such opportunistic brands. Consumers can see through, advertising for the sake of advertising. So maybe 6 months ago, we wouldn't have put out communication like this. 6 months ago, our communication was about come into our branches, sit down with us, have a conversation. But in the COVID era, we had to adapt, and thankfully the brand idea of open allows you to talk about connecting with customers in the physical context and allows you to be connected to customers even in the digital world. So I think it's important for brands to not come across as opportunistic at all.
Kainaz and Prateek, as creatives, you anyway have a very challenging job to tell a story that is, breaking the clutter, standing out and making an impact. But I think going forward, when social distancing will become the new normal, when the entire fear psychosis, which we all seem to be facing in terms of just socializing, which has suddenly become a taboo, comes into play, even when we, let's say, see some semblance of normalcy, the storytelling for creatives like both of you is going to get even tougher in terms of visualization, in terms of how you tell the story, in terms of how just humans interact and communicate with each other. What's the path looking like for you guys? Has there been some thoughts that the creative industry has had in terms of, the new normal of visualization and storytelling in the complex world that we're all going to set foot in going forward?
Sonali, the thing is, and I am being very optimistic here, and I feel that every time the human race, hits a real wall, they find a way to break the wall. It may take a little time, but I think they'll find a way to break the wall. So I am not that afraid about how storytelling will be done, because I'm in fact feeling very confident that as we go ahead, new ways of working are going to be emerged, and these new ways of working will allow us to do the kind of work that we probably couldn't do earlier. I'll give you an example. We were shooting something for a client where we needed to shoot across India. In a normal case, what would happen is two creative people, the director, his entire crew, and a DOP would travel from place to place, going across and shooting it. Because this situation is what it is, what we did was the director decided to go with multiple DOPs. So multiple DOPs shot in their specific area where the lockdown was not there, or where there were relaxations about shooting. And within like whatever they could shoot in their building, in their house, in DOP's houses, things are being shot because that is not breaking the rule. If a DOP shoots a fistful of rice in his wife's hand with a camera and takes a beautiful shot of it, that is not breaking the rule. So we have put the whole film, together like that, and when you see the film, it is seamless. You will not be able to tell two different DOPs shot it, or maybe a technical person can, but for the public at large, or even us, you will not be able to tell, because the film was then sent to Tokyo to get graded. Somebody else parallelly was doing music. We in fact managed to get the Nuran sisters to record for us from their own hometown, and all of these different pieces happened in different parts of the country, one in Japan, and they are being put together. So ways of working will emerge, and in fact, my request to my team has always been that do not think with fear. Do not think with fear in mind that okay, only this much is possible to execute. Yes, we have to be realistic. Yes, we have to keep in mind the fact that maybe not COVID, but the impact of COVID is here to stay for a bit. Social distancing is here to stay for a bit, but push yourself to come up with the best idea, find great partners, and try and execute what you think cannot be executed. If you push yourself, you will find a way. Until a month back, besides user generated content, nobody could think of anything. Now people are finding solutions. So one must always ideate fearlessly, keep a curtain of reality, but just go out there and think of great ideas and keep doing great work for your brands.
That's great. Prateek, if I could ask you to touch upon how you will look at visualization in the future. Will you have masks? Will you have people talking to each other distantly? How will you show gatherings, celebrations? I mean, has there been some thought given to that?
See, advertising will reflect the way people live, right? So if these masks become a way of life forever, I mean, yeah, then they will come into our work as well, right? But there's certain things we'll have to do, and there's certain things we'll probably avoid as a choice, because we'll also have to be. Yes, we have to be relevant, but we also have to be responsible. And like you said, some brands have stopped some commercials and have not aired them, have stopped and are not airing them now. Because, and I can understand why. I mean, if you have a commercial that's got a gathering and full festivity going on and people coming together to celebrate, when the government is saying, hey, listen, please stay away, so you maintain social distancing, then that might not be the right commercial to put on air. It won't be the most responsible thing to do, So those are choices that you take for sure. But otherwise, I also feel, after a while, people are going to get sick of this context. If everything is about talking about COVID and the way we are dealing with it, people are going to get sick of it. And I think brands are going to start. I mean, whatever we have to adopt into our world, of course, we will adopt. But I think we'll stop referencing to it also. I mean, work will move on, and I see humor coming back in a very big way. I think people are going to say, forget all this, give us some good old jokes and get us happy again, and advertising will take that route too. So yeah, if life changes as we know it, we will adapt to it. We will get that into our work. But I don't think we'll be referencing to it all the time, and that's going to get boring, really.
Sure. I think that's a fair point. I think advertising will up its humor quotient, because I think that's the only thing that will keep us going. On that note, I'd like to thank my panel. Thank you so much. And once again, kudos to all four of you to actually be, working overtime and putting out stuff despite the challenges at hand. All the very best, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. Thank you so much for joining us on Brand Equity.